It's not going down, which.
But it's not going up, that's good.
Yeah, but he dropped a bunch of it and then it went back up.
Wow.
So with this condition, it would be great, Ron, if you could lose some and stay off, the weight stays off, but it's not.
Steve, who are you talking about?
My father.
Oh, I didn't know he was ill.
He broke his leg in May.
He's been tied up for a long
Oh,
time.
yeah, bad.
But the break wasn't bad. The issue was the knee where he had it replaced about 15 years ago. He had double knee replacement, so that's what's the issue now. It's not, the break was really good, was fine. It healed fine, but now it's the knee issue. So that's where he's at.
But the break was probably a simple thing, right?
Yeah, well, the break was real high, but his issue now is not his knee. So that's where he's at.
How old is your dad?
He is 85 right now.
Okay, that would make a big difference too in the age.
And then they mentioned with the knee, Tony, that he's so old that they don't want to really do any more surgery, but IBJI said everything was okay with the knee.
That's understandable.
Yeah, so that's where he's sitting around, you know. Every week there's a question mark, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Anybody else need a pencil?
Oh yeah, I can take one, thank you. All right.
I want them back. Because if I don't get them back, I'm gonna hear from Sherry.
Yeah. There's the copyright, 1956.
Good thing I brought that for it.
Yeah.
Glad you brought yours. Well, I would have had enough for four. Oh, well, that's my intersection morning. Put down 2 flights of stairs twice.
That's your exercise.
Yeah. Good thing I had my knee warmed up. Get down the stairs first thing in the morning. It's not always pleasant.
I don't even remember what we studied.
Week 5.
We're studying Blessed is the Man, the man's journey through the Psalms.
Psalm 128.
128.
When did we do that now? I have to look at home.
I think you better get a refreshment from Pastor.
Where you been?
Because we were doing
We're back to the Blessed is the Man.
This is our.
Well, I don't have the copy of the book right now, I have it at home.
Well,
You got
how fast
Psalm
can you drive home
128?
and
Yeah,
get
you
it?
got Psalm 128?
How
You
fast?
got Psalm
I got it
128?
here, yeah.
Well, open it
I
up.
gotta
Psalm
find it.
128.
I haven't put all the other stickers on
Oh, you
yet.
have got all your stickers on. Oh.
This is the, you know what this is? That's the reference. These are all references, like oracles from the reign of Joshua, chapters 2,
Okay,
6,
just
and so on.
find Psalm 128 so we can start.
Yeah.
I gotta find some here. I've never, you know,
We're never
it's
patient.
interesting. Some Bibles.
I'm just
really
giving Tony a
short.
hard time.
Some Bibles
Gotta
are
get him
good,
to,
Bibles
gotta
are
get him to
good.
move on.
Yeah, that ain't gonna work.
That's the group.
That's true, I should have known by now. I thought I'd try again.
Is that the Bible you have or the Quran? What do you have there? You got the right book? Is that the right book?
It's the Bible.
You got the Quran?
Yeah, actually.
Is
I
it
got
in
the
Arabic?
Quran.
Is that English or Arabic?
Thou shalt cometh to Mecca once a year.
I guess you got the Quran.
Pastor shaking his head.
You got the Quran going. Up to
Tony.
Actually, no, this is the Book of Mormon. I couldn't refuse that one.
All right.
Book of Mormon, yeah. That's,
Yeah, I've actually read some of that. It's got some of the Old Testament in it.
Yeah, just some though, right?
Yeah, we're on, in the book, we're gonna be looking at pages 134 and 35 is where the Bible study is, the group Bible study is for week 5. Psalm 128 was what we covered this week. And starting in January, we go to this one, which is upstairs on the church office counter. It says, "Blessed be the man, a man's journey through the
What
Psalms,"
is it, number?
but it's a different book. It's Psalms of Lament. This is the new book. Yeah, we have been doing the Psalms of wisdom, divine wisdom.
Divine wisdom.
We're on divine.
So we're gonna go to
glory.
Psalms of
Yeah.
Lament.
Steve, which psalm are we on?
This, Psalm 128.
One
Psalm
28.
Psalm
128.
128 is a good psalm.
128.
Very uplifting
For the
psalm.
7th time, 128, man, okay?
So pick up one of these upstairs and then throw $10 in the kitty for it, if you want.
Is there a-
It's not required, the Donna Grun Bible Study covers it, but if you wanna reimburse, that's
Is
fine.
there a basket up there, or do we just give it to Sherry?
Just give it to Sherry. So that's what we'll start in January. We meet next week, we'll finish this other book. Then we don't meet for 2 weeks, which is Christmas and New Year's.
Okay, it's
So-
a small one.
All right?
Oh, sorry.
It's a short one, but there's a lot in it.
Don't adjust.
Yeah, no kidding. Did you do it every week? Every day this week?
No, I did it all yesterday.
I didn't do the questions either.
I sent a note out.
Did you? I didn't
Yeah,
see it.
because I said on
Sometimes
Wednesday.
you try to crash and do it all at one time,
You
right?
can
Ron?
do it all at one time, it takes about an hour.
I read it and I did, in the story, but I didn't do.
Sometimes it's easier to crash it at 10 at night and read it all, you know?
Well, I crashed it at 11:30 last night.
Takes about an hour.
That's about the time I.
Well, I didn't do the questions. I
Oh, you
just
didn't do
read
the
it.
go out,
I
okay.
didn't
I
do
just
it
read
either.
All right.
I was in no mind to do questions. It was enough that I got everything calmed down. And
You got the trail boss in, huh?
I got, oh yeah, I got the trail boss and all of it. I did all 5. I mean, the read is easy, you know, and it's a good read. I mean,
It's,
they're all good.
what does this mean is the hard thing.
Yeah.
What
It's the
does this
questions,
mean? That's
yeah.
always what it takes forever. When you think about it.
Yeah, when
Read
you
it
have to
again
think
for a
about
fourth time.
what you're doing. But anyway.
Good.
I thought about it. I mean, there's.
And online is Dan. He's over here.
Dan.
Yes.
Oh, Dan Man?
Dan the man.
Dan
All right.
Man's here.
Welcome,
Dan Mon.
Mon.
See, there he is.
All right.
And then on YouTube is Les.
Oh.
Love.
That's long.
Yes. So we're very happy that they are here.
Yeah.
So, let's start with prayer. Thank you, Father, for this opportunity to gather together on this wet and cold December morning to cover Psalm 128. Please forgive us and bless us and fill us with your wisdom as we seek your divine wisdom in this psalm in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
The 128th psalm is a psalm of comfort in which the estate of marriage is splendidly praised. Marriage partners are given this great comfort. They should not look only at the trouble, work, discouragement, and discomfort they feel and experience in marriage, but rather look at the gracious will of God toward them, that their station and life are a gracious creation of God and are blessed by Him. Therefore, marriage is dear to Him, and He gives it much more happiness and blessing than discomfort. If one only believes and adapts oneself to marriage and faithfully remains within it. Thus, in the beginning and the middle of the psalm, it says, everyone who fears the Lord. When the godless go astray, on the other hand, it is no surprise. That's Martin Luther on marriage. And remember that Luther himself was not just some Catholic priest telling other people, this is what God means about marriage. He speaks from experience. Luther opened the priesthood or the ministry to marriage, and so he himself was married. And he knows firsthand discomfort, discouragement in marriage, but to look at the gracious will of God for them and to find the good stuff. And that's the point of this psalm, one of the points of this psalm. So,
And his children, what do you have? How many?
9 or 7 or 9 children,
You have
yeah.
7 or 9?
Some of them did not make it out of
Oh, wow.
infancy.
Yeah, that was.
That's the 16th century for you.
Yeah, right.
So,
That's why you had 7 or 9.
tell about a time when you felt especially blessed, and what was it that made that a blessed time? Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
Nobody's blessed.
No, I was
Right.
thinking about this last night.
No,
when I went
no
back.
particular time, but when you, at this point in my life, when I look back at my marriage in the years, 58 years, I realized God did a wonderful thing when He picked out my wife.
I hope she feels the same way.
I mean, that was great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you know, when were you most blessed? I mean, I've been blessed many times through my life when I look
Right.
back, and I, you know, you have to look back and like, you know, I was blessed with a wonderful wife also. And you just have to look back and thank God for all your blessings. I don't know if there is really one I could pick out that's.
I think sometimes you get blessings out of a bad situation.
Wow.
You're done with it, and I'm glad I'm done. I'm blessed that it didn't get worse, or it's finally over. You're over the hump, and sometimes feel blessed that it didn't get worse.
Yeah.
Like health issues. Let's say you come off of health issues that could have put you in the grave or something, and you made it through that. And you're blessed. You got through that.
Yep. I hear you. It's interesting for those watching this online. Two of the guys in the room and then one guy online, well, two guys online are married. Two of the guys in the room are not. So, interesting. The perspective that we had.
I've been surprised at how many different ways I've been blessed over the years, and it changes, from childhood to young adult to, marriage to family, and it's been have been blessed in a lot of different ways, and kind of discouraged that I haven't been able to bless others some of the ways that I've been blessed, but still it's a great experience.
Awesome. Good insight too.
Well, we think we don't bless other people, but just by hopefully being, in God's Word and trying to do our best, we kind of bless other people.
Well, of course you do, yeah.
We may not say I bless you, but just by being there to help or whatever, it's a blessing to them.
Absolutely. I believe that's to be true as well. That's how God does bless other people, through us, not just directly. You guys that were married, you were blessed through your wife, in ways that you probably don't even realize. You would have to sit down and think about it, and then you would better have some time, right?
Yeah.
Because
right.
the longer you're married, the more blessings you have.
Right.
Not everybody has the same experience, but I think that you two do, and I do. So, but again, not everybody has that experience in life, either not being married or not having a blessed marriage. Okay, and that's what Luther must have. When Luther says this, it must have been from some kind of experience that he had with other people, maybe in his own marriage too, looking at the trouble, the work, the discouragement, and discomfort they feel and experience in marriage. And that's in the 16th century. Nothing has changed today. In fact, it may even be worse, since there was really no divorce in the 16th century. You were married for life. Of course, the church did not allow it, and the courts may or may not. I mean, that was the whole reason there was an English Reformation, was because the king in England wanted a divorce from his wife, and that was unheard of. Today, half of marriages end in divorce, and there's just a lot of that going on. And so Luther's words are just as relevant today, 500 years later, than they were when he first spoke. So we do feel blessed. And all blessings from a Christian perspective come from God. And from a non-Christian perspective, they still come from God, they just may not realize it. What is the difference between being blessed and being fortunate or lucky?
Well, blessings come from God, and luck, I don't know where, it's just luck. It just kind of,
Okay.
The blessing for sure comes from the Lord.
Luck is when you win the lottery.
Luck is when you win the lottery, is the comment made. Okay. I think for me it's one of perspective. There really is no difference between being fortunate and lucky and being blessed. It's whether you recognize it's coming from God or not. If you don't recognize it coming from God, then you would say it's fortunate or it's lucky, but it's really from God. All good things come from God. Okay? So it's one of perspective, one of the heart, one of faith. To me, that's the difference. Let's see if I got the answer right. The answers are on page 186. And 186 tells us that fortune and luck come by chance. Blessing is directed by one who is able to bless. In other words, blessing demands a God who is able to bless. Luck can happen with or without God. Okay, so more along the lines of what Steve was saying. Steve got it right. I did not. Very good. We are told in verse 1 of Psalm 128, to walk in God's ways. Are his ways the same for every one of us? Or does he have a different way for each of us? What's the same and what's different?
I think his plan for each of us is different.
Okay. How is it the same though?
Well, the goal is the same, to be saved.
Okay.
That leads you to Jesus, and, you know, through grace, that's the same. But how we get to, you know, what we do, it's gonna be different for everybody, because you have different, you're brought up different, you have different ways that you go through life. Everybody has a different take on things, but still, you know, in the end, it's that God would lead you, no matter what your way is, or how you're doing it, or what you're working at, that God is leading you, and your life is still to the glory of God, no matter how you do it. You know, it could be different, but it's, the main idea is that you're not sitting and you're not, you know, like robbing people or whatever. You're, you know, it's a good life. You're working hard, which, you know, the Bible tells, you know, we should work hard, and hard work is and done well is glorifying God.
The end goal is always the same.
Yeah, yeah,
We just get about it different ways.
right.
People's, as you say, life experience is different. Whether where you're born, maybe what country, what time you're born in, what generation. Those are all the things that make everyone's life different, of course.
Yeah, your traditions from your, you know, from parents and the tradition you come from, it's all different, but it's all should be, you know, pointed towards glorifying
I-
God.
And we stumble.
I was reading this week about liberty and how with some rules it gives you true freedom versus if there's sort of anarchy or, you know, tyranny or whatever, if there's like too many laws. So God gives us a framework of society with the Ten Commandments and whatever, so that, and that's actually the most freeing sort of liberty, kind of a system. And so I would say, yeah, it's the same rules, but then again, there's all this freedom that we have. Just like, it reminds me when I was studying Genesis, and it's like, you are free to eat of all the trees or whatever. Like, the first thing he told them is you have this freedom, right? But there were just these couple of trees that they weren't supposed to, this one tree that they weren't supposed to, touch. So there's a lot of freedom for us to be unique and individuals.
Notice the question, even the verse, walk in God's ways. That's the reason it's saying what's the same and what's different. Everybody's walk is different.
Correct.
Even literally, how you walk is different. You may walk differently than other people, and then you get it, you expand on that metaphorically or living your life. Everybody is different because you're all unique. But what is the same? The ways of God. And where are the ways of God described or given to us?
Laws, commandments.
The Ten Commandments, right. Everybody has the same 10 Commandments. Because the law is written on your heart, and then later was written on 2 tablets of stone for Israel, and then the new Israel, the church. But the 10 Commandments are written on everybody's hearts. Okay? So, in ways that are the same, we all have, like you said, the same goal, but we have, the ways of God are the same for everybody. But the walking, that's what's different. And this is where people can get sidetracked, I think. Well, then, my walk is different from your walk, so I don't need to be around other people. I don't need to be around the church or other Christians because everybody's different anyway. But it's that same way. The walk is different, but the ways are the same because they're the same 10 Commandments. And remember, the third commandment is worshiping God. It's together, remembering the Sabbath day, keeping it holy. So you're walking together, which is why we are called the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. Synod means to walk together. Each one of our walks is different. Every congregation is different. We're completely different from, say, Lord of Glory and Grace Lake. Completely different. We have a different look in our congregation, a different look in our sanctuary, a different look in our worship styles, but we're still the same. We walk the same way, the way of God. So that's why I think there is such that temptation to not get together, and remembering that the God's ways are the ways we are to walk in. Okay.
I think it was Thursday, he was talking about, you know, walking and then falling away or different, you know, what was that? Anyway, I was thinking, yeah, that's, you know, but the goal is to get back to God, even though, you know, we think we have a better idea and we can try and do this or try and do that, but, you know, hopefully God will bring us back to, you know, one, I can't remember which day it was.
Well, that Thursday was the pancakes, and the kid found $2 silver.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
I remember the last week was the one where the mentors and the kids, and that there was a walking away, but I don't remember that specifically in this past week. Fear of the Lord on Thursday. Friday was the wake of the gospel and the fishing on the boat coming on the water and swamping the shore.
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Is the work you do, whether at home or at your job, a curse or a blessing? And how does...
I think you're blessed just the fact that you're able to do, whether you're able to walk on your job or you have to sit somewhere because you can't stand, still a blessing to be able to do that, versus someone who can't work for physical issues or mental issues. So I think it's always going to be a blessing that you're able to work for, you know, physically or mentally. I think, you know, that's a plus versus someone who cannot work for physical reasons or mental. So I'd say it's a plus that you're able to work.
All right. How do other people feel about that?
It depends on your job, I think. Some people
Yeah.
don't get into a
Yeah.
good job and it's, you know, it's like they come home, they're grumbling and they're not happy, so that, you know, that job could.
But when you go, at the end of the day, you gotta realize you still should be blessed that you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Whether the day was bad, you know, yeah, I guess day to day you can have issues, but looking at the bigger picture, yeah, I was fortunate to be able to go to that job.
Oh, that's
Whether it was bad or not, I guess, you know,
Yeah.
looking, the short term, yeah, it's been, okay, I'm having a problem, but the long term, I think it's fortunate you were able to do that. That's just my opinion on that. You know, as I get older, okay, yeah, maybe day to day, but in the long run, I was fortunate to be able to contribute, you know, and do the best I can at my job.
How do people typically react to their jobs? Or stereotypically react to their jobs?
I think a lot of people are not happy in their job.
Right. And what do they think of their jobs as being?
Drudgery.
Drudgery, yeah, that's exactly the word I was looking for. They gotta go to the salt mines.
Yeah.
That's the old saw.
That makes it harder. I try to be more optimistic, say,
Oh, yeah.
well, you know, this is something I really have to do, you know, to put food on my table, to pay my bills, it's something you have to do, so just do it. That's, you know, as I get older, I realize you really have to do it.
Yes.
It's just
Why do you have to work?
to support yourself or a family and.
Okay.
Yeah,
But doesn't God support you? Don't you have faith that God will take care of you?
He is taking care of you by allowing you.
So
to
why do you work?
Because it's to the glory of God you work.
All right, yeah, it told you to look at Genesis 2:15 and Ecclesiastes 9:10. Why do you work? If you look those up.
We're also serving our fellow man.
That's true
Our
as
neighbors.
well. But oftentimes I don't care about my fellow man, so that's sometimes what I hear You know, I'm not hurting anybody but myself, and I'm looking out for number one. So I don't care about my fellow man. You work because God made you to work. All work is not part of the fall into sin. Work was given to us to do before we fell into sin. And Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going. You don't get to work when you're dead. You get to work now. It's a gift from God, believe it or not. And so Steve is right. He just didn't know where I was going with this, but he was reaffirming my comment. You should look at your work as something that's a blessing, because it is something God has given you to do. You don't use the term work then. When we're thinking of it in that way, we use it as vocation. That's another way to look at it. The Latin word means your calling. This is what you were made to do. Were you made to dig ditches? Maybe. You know, I saw on a TV show last night that two guys were, one is retired, one is still working, and the one guy asked, what's the best job in the school? Where this guy was a coach, he's a football coach in the school, and he's asking his retired friend, what do you think is the best job in the school? And he thought the janitor. Because he gets to move that buffing machine. That looks like it's a blast to do. And he doesn't have to, he can listen to music, he doesn't have to deal with kids. Yeah, there's the occasional vomit you have to clean up, but
Don't have to grade papers.
yeah, exactly. So even a janitor in the school, this guy was thinking, that's a great job. Every job should be a joy, because it is the job that God has called you to do at that moment. So it's one of attitude. I think that's what Dwayne was saying. It is an attitude or a perspective.
And, every job has its good day and its bad day.
Oh, sure.
And in today's world, a lot of people have different vocations. They switch more than
Yes.
parents or grandparents. You're different careers constantly. Friends are, whether you own a business failed, now you're doing something else, and so on
Or
and so
you'll
forth.
start another business.
Right,
A lot of-
and maybe, right.
Yeah.
I just saw a news report about that too. You've got the, I don't know what they call it, but they're quitting, their jobs.
I saw 4
But there's-
million people quit.
Yeah.
Was it September now?
Yeah.
They said it's the most ever. 4.2 million people quit their jobs, they say, because of COVID or other reasons.
Yeah, they want to do something else, but now the news story, the headline was, now the backfire is coming. All of a sudden, because the government's not going to bail you out forever. It can't.
Oh,
by
right.
logic, it can't.
Right.
And maybe, the government thinks it can.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a reckoning. And these people that are, I can quit my job and do whatever I want to do. In a sense, yes, you can, but you still have to work. And that's where the second part of that is missed. They're quitting their jobs because they don't want to work anymore. But then what are you going to do? Well, the government will bail me out, or my parents will bail me out. I'll live at my parents' home. Well, yeah, we're starting to see the effect of that as well. That is not what God intended for us. And so how can that be blessed? That isn't a blessing. God is going to have to redeem that, which means he's going to buy it back, which means he's going to have to tear something down. That's what God does when redemption happens. In God's world, redemption happens when you tear something down to build something new. And the redemption of our souls was Jesus had to be torn down so that our souls could be redeemed. Okay? But it's the same thing there. If you're going to just quit your job or quit work altogether, a redemption has to happen before blessings come. Because you can't be blessed if your hands are full. If your hands are full, even of yourself, they got to be empty. They got to be torn down. Something to think about.
That's an interesting concept. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. I'm glad then. Okay, well, I could quit now. We
Yeah.
could go home. I've got a new point
Think
out.
about that, that's a lot to think about.
It is a lot to think about. Yeah, these jobs, people don't think about that when they're quitting their jobs, You got to do something because you got to do something with your hands. That's what God made you to
A
do.
lot of people, when they quit, they have thought about what they want to do.
Yes,
A
and
lot
so
of
that's
people
true.
are fed up with the job, so maybe a year, they start to think, okay, what do I want to do? I know I gotta support either myself or my family. So they start to think about, what would I really like, can I do this or what?
Yeah, this was big in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, if you think about it. And there's lots of, what's nice, I'm sure it happened in other decades and in other generations, but we have now documentaries about this. People quit their job and started their own businesses. This was big in the 60s and 70s. And one of my favorite places to look at that is Silicon Valley in California with all the startups that happened. You know, Apple Computer, Xerox, or Hewlett Packard, all these different things, these startups in Silicon Valley. They quit their jobs and they started their own, but they did more work. They did the work they wanted to do, and many of them were blessed by
They
that.
probably worked more hours. Well, the same
Sure.
thing happened in the nineties.
Yes.
The dot-com, you know.
The bubble burst. Yes.
The bubble burst, but from 92 to 99, it was really great. If you were in that industry, I mean, dot-coms were popping up all over. I know in my, working on computers, et cetera, we were going crazy.
Yeah.
Because the dot-coms were coming up and they needed equipment and, it was good for IBM too.
Yeah.
So we were busier than cat on a hot tin roof.
And so when you look at it from that perspective, that it is a blessing, yes, that it truly is. And that's what work is supposed to be.
And then 2020 happened and it was like,
Well, yeah, and so we were given a perspective. God allowed this to happen so to get our attention for a reason. And so we have to really, I think we have to reimagine what those days look like and how we can do this today. What kind of work can you do? Amazon is a great example. I mean, what you think about them, whether they're in political or in their cultural context, but they are helping their employees. I mean, people are working, they're hiring left and right at Amazon.
hear about what happened.
Yes, I did.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they're going to help. I'm sure you're going to be hearing stories about how they're going to be helping those families.
Oh, I'm sure.
But
But it's
they-
kind of interesting, because last night, the 10 o'clock news ended up with the weather and everything extending to almost 11 o'clock.
Right.
And they just got, 100 feet of wall came down, and that was it. And now this morning, this whole ceiling collapsed.
Yeah, the building is basically
Building is
gone. 7 people died, and they're still looking for other
Oh,
people.
is it up to 7 now?
Yeah, 7 this morning, and then they're still looking because of how big the facility was.
Those are all huge.
But they helped their employees as well. You see the commercial for that. The guy went back, it paid for his schooling to go back to become a nurse.
Yeah, well, you hope so. I mean, the guy's a billionaire. You hope he can put something back in the company.
And they do. And Amazon seems to be doing that. So, yeah,
You
that's.
sure have a lot of drivers and they're working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
They're working 7 days a week.
Yes, they are, and they have their own fleet now. They were using UPS for a long time, and then they started their own fleet, and now you've got those people doing that. And then the new facilities going up. There's one in Mundelein, there's one in Kenosha, of course, the big one's in Kenosha. They want to put one in the city as well, if I'm what I hear, or somewhere in the south suburbs, so.
Where I work, we have a specific pack area just for our Amazon stuff that we have,
Yep.
that we go out.
Oh, yeah.
It's that much that we have it's unbelievable how much business that they're doing with.
And their employees seem to be very happy. I mean, their drivers certainly do. I wave at them at the window, when they're dropping stuff off. They seem to be very friendly, very happy with what they're doing. And that's the attitude, that's a godly attitude, whether they believe in God or not. I would suspect that the majority of them do have some kind of faith. That's why they're happy. So,
The reason I think, because the small company that I order my food from, Home Chef, and it's, you get to prepare it yourself. But they switched from, UPS, they got their own drivers, and they basically, now they just contracted out to individuals, and
Yep.
they have much better, the package don't arrive banged up, you get your box, and it looks almost a new box.
and it's in their corporate family now.
Yeah. They-
Chick-fil-A is another great example of that. DoorDash and Uber Eats, that was the big thing. So that people can order food and then get it delivered to them. And Chick-fil-A started using that, but right away they went back and made their own fleets.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, every restaurant, well, I don't know about every restaurant, but at least the one in Vernon Hills has its own fleet of delivery drivers now and cars. And so, but Chick-fil-A is a great example of what we're talking about here for work because of the corporate attitude. They are a Christian organization from top to bottom. And that's why my Kurt it's a great fit for him. As a Christian
works
young
for
man.
Chick-fil-A?
Yes, he does.
Well, I heard, like, people are just so happy with the ambiance.
Yeah, the atmosphere.
Christian ambiance.
Yes.
And, they're just, everybody's just, and they have that through the day, so there's not as much grumbling and
Exactly. And
They started, I think, almost from the beginning, no work on Sundays.
Yeah, they're not open on Sundays.
Family day, you
Right.
go to church with your family, so No one is scheduled ever on Sunday, so they know they have that day off.
They started his interview with him with prayer. So they didn't know who he was. That's the way they start their interviews, and they're very family friendly. And they're closed on Sunday.
Heard they started it with prayer. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the show.
No. The interview at Chick-fil-A when he interviewed for the job.
Uh-huh.
So, and they do. Yeah, you're right. They're closed on Sundays. They encourage that. But they had their Christmas party on the Sunday, I think before Thanksgiving was it ended up being. I think that's what it was, because Thanksgiving wasn't that long ago. And so they got together Sunday afternoon. It was like 4:30. But you see the commercials for that too. The one lady was a young gal, had started working at Chick-fil-A. She rode a bike because she didn't have a car. And so they actually did and gave her a car at that party.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
they pooled together and corporate bought her a car.
Oh.
So that's the attitude. Is work a curse or a blessing? It is a blessing because it is given to us before the fall into sin. How you deal with work will be the curse part. Sin brings that, but God wants us to understand work as a gift from Him. All right.
What would we do if we didn't work?
Yeah, well, we would just sit there, right?
Or we get in trouble.
Idle hands of the devil's workshop is a
There you
very
go.
good one. Yeah, and so the book of Ecclesiastes does talk about that, but also the book of Proverbs. You sluggard, look at the ant. You know, he's talking about that at one point. I think it's in Proverbs 9 or something like that, where even they work. You are made to work, but it's not to be a curse. So we live in a broken world, number 5. If we live in a broken world, which we do, and if sin pollutes and perverts everything, which it does, making our existence a vale of tears, how can a Christian man ever justify feeling happy? This is a little bit of a pivot here. How can a Christian man ever justify being happy in this world?
Well, just from my own experience, I go back to family because just, my wife and I were both Lutheran, and so it was one of the things when we were looking for a mate. We wanted to be family religion, same religion. So we stayed right with Missouri.
Good for you. I'm happy.
And it worked out great. And my kids are my joy. So that's that makes me feel happy in this world that is really going to the dogs right now. But still,
That's
my
right.
kids are still in church, and they're raising their kids, from what I can see, the same way that Jan and I raised them. So that makes me feel good, and I thank God every night that for that He's blessed us in that way.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's again, we get back to attitude or perspective.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know if this was intended by the author or whoever wrote the questions for the Bible study. The guy that wrote this week, where is it? I want to say Bob Morris. That's it. No, we're in week 5, aren't we? Wasn't Bob?
Isn't it a different guy for every day?
It is. And so Steve Sanford was the guy that wrote this, but I don't know if they have somebody else that the editor writes the questions. They sometimes do that. But he uses the word, I think, the part of the answer for number 5 is in the question. How can a Christian man ever justify feeling happy? Because you are justified by God, by faith alone, through grace alone. That's how a Christian man justifies feeling happy, because this is not about what you feel, this is about what God does to you as a gift. I think, anyway. That's the way I took this. You justify feeling happy because of God, which is what you were saying.
It obviously is a gift of God.
Yes.
The world is evil.
Yeah. The world has got a problem, yeah.
Yeah.
The world isn't necessarily evil in and of itself. It's just that it is the devil's kingdom, and Jesus is in the process of redeeming it. At the end, he's going to have to destroy it with fire and rebuild. But because the church is here, we are in the process. Remember, this is the kingdom of grace right now. And that's how we justify being happy. We are members of the kingdom of grace. It's it's a great question. And yeah, there is a bunch of evil out there, but, right, Dan?
I think just the fact that we have a good God, I mean, the Creator who wants the best for us, that's a justify for feeling happy.
Absolutely.
Even if he has to discipline us or whatever, I mean,
Right.
we have someone who's yeah, I guess it has to do with grace, but he has our best interests in mind.
Absolutely. I believe that to be a fact as well. I think that a better question is, how can a Christian man ever justify not feeling happy? How can you not feel happy as a Christian?
Yeah.
You're saved. God is in the process of giving you good and gracious gifts every day of your life. And you have a retirement package that's out of this world. Is one way to look at it. Okay, that God is making this new world for you. How can you not be feeling happy? Yes, sin pollutes everything, perverts everything. But now you have, that's part of your work. Part of your work can be to combat that. You have something to say about this. And you have the tools or the weapons even. And this is where some people get really messed up with the Christians. You have, you're using your Bible as your sword. Yes, that's true, but you're thinking of the battle in a different way. We are not out that they think of battles and wars as destroying. But no, battles and wars are to save the world. World War II was not about destroying Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan. It was about saving the world. It was about, why did we fight in Europe, especially saving the Jewish people and all the other people who were being exterminated. And so, the same thing with the Christian war. We are out there to save people, not to destroy. The only thing we're destroying is Satan and his minions. So, it's a matter of perspective. Number 6. How does a biblical view of the place and importance of family differ from the view of the culture around us? Now we can have at it with this one, right? What is the view of the family and the culture?
Well, it's the biblical view.
What is the culture view? How does the culture around us view family?
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, the biblical view, of course, is
Okay,
ours.
I get your question.
Yeah.
Seems like people think the family is there to serve them.
Yeah, at best. Yeah. That's the best view of that, of the culture's view of family, is to serve me. How many broken families do we have in the world?
I think culture is for each person to serve themselves.
Yeah, well, it almost goes without saying, right? We're all inherently selfish.
Well,
That's our original sin.
and that's being really promoted, I think.
Oh, yeah. And this is why there's so much conflict in the culture. People wonder why. Why is there so much discord? Why is there so much disharmony in our culture today? Why are we pitted against each other? Because we have at our very root, which is the family unit, a disunity. You've got mom trying to raise the kids, and you've got dad is at best absent.
Right.
And so the disunity is right from the very beginning.
Right. You don't have two parents anymore. You
No.
have one parent or.
Basically, you have mom and a sperm donor, to put it very bluntly. Dads are not involved at all, at best. Okay, and this is why we have the problems we have in our culture today. And this is not something I just came up with. This has been harped on by Billy Graham, starting probably with even before that. Preachers were harping on this. The family, it starts in the family. But this is especially true in our culture today. When dad is absent, we got a big problem. And that's the reason the culture is in such disarray today. And so what's the first thing we need to do is we need to get the families to start together and stay together. And it's difficult. And it's not impossible, but it is at best difficult. It's near impossible. Without God, it is impossible. And that doesn't mean, so don't misunderstand me. If you're divorced and and things like that, well, then there's no hope for you. Sure there is. God can redeem that as well. And God will redeem that. But you have to acknowledge that God is in the redemption business and in the salvation business. And that's the difference here from the culture. The culture says, we don't need that. We don't need that at all. Okay? And that's from our sitcoms to our movies to our government telling us parents don't, the nuclear family is a relic of the past that we don't need anymore.
Yeah, well, basically the same, and that goes back to, we don't need God.
Yep.
I mean, your society now, the millennials, their percentage of people who believe in God is really high compared to previous.
Sure.
To that age group.
And now they're getting to this point where something is missing in their lives. And yes, they have a huge distrust of the church, but the answer still is there in the church. And so we've got to be able to overcome that. That's one of the things that we are dealing with our vision here at St. Matthew. They have come to realize more and more every day, especially that generation, that something is missing. There is a boundless need out there. And ultimately what is missing in their lives is God. Now they may believe in God, so what's missing then is what God intended for us, how God intended for us to live, which was in community. Or the church, the local congregation. That's the way God intended for this. But I don't believe in, all they talk about is money. And we have that, amongst the ministry team here, we've just seen that. That is the number one mistrust of the church in that age bracket of non-believing people, is all the church is interested in is money. Well, thankfully, here at St. Matthew, we don't have to really talk about it at all, because we don't have that problem. Our problem is we don't know what to do with our money here. People have been blessed beyond measure, and they hand out, yes, this is from God, so use it, give it. I'm giving it to the church. So now we need to find a way to show them we are not doing that, and so we need to reach out to them and listen to what their need is. Everybody's need is the same. It is a lack of God or a lack of the family relationship that God intended for us in the local congregation, and then how to address that specific need in each one of them.
I find it kind of funny when people talk, probably non-Christians mostly, talk about the church, and they're like, well, the church is kind of dying. You should change your ways. You should come up to speed with modern thinking. You're not going to be successful unless you do that. And they're talking about getting more people and getting more money and everything. Like, they talk about it like almost like a business.
Yes.
And
that's a problem.
But that's the way they think of it. They think of it as sort of this kind of a sham thing where you're controlling people or whatever, and it's like, that's not really what it's all about.
No.
And so they don't really get it. They don't get it at all.
There is aspects of the business world that the church can certainly use, especially accounting. Good accounting, which is really good stewardship when you think about it.
Well, sure.
But you can't run the church like a business. And every church has to deal with that eventually.
Yeah, it's not about promoting your product and creating a new product because times have changed and new people want a different product. I mean, God is the same forever. So you got the same. You're going to have to work with the same thing. They don't understand that.
No, but they are understanding more and more, I think, anyway, that what is missing in their lives, that something is, and we have a unique opportunity as the church today because of all the different ways that we can address the needs. Because we have different ways. Look at us. So, I mean, we're online in three different places if you think about it. We have YouTube, Facebook, and then directly with Dan via the online software. So, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people involved in this, and there's only 5 people physically in the room. And who knows how many people are going to be watching this afterwards as well. We have the technology, which we do, yes, what Dan is saying, we do adapt to the culture. We certainly do that, and that's been historical in the church. And from the very beginning, it always has used the current technology to get the timeless or changeless message out to people. But again, question 6 in our book is about the importance of family. And that's where it begins. And it's not too late this is something that I think that churches need to understand. It's never too late. And it's never too late in your own lives. You know, so yeah, Anthony and Steve who are unmarried in the room, maybe there is a wife out there for you.
But then again, if you don't, we still have to promote and be respectful and
Yes.
diligent with their mother, father, aunt, uncle, nephews and nieces.
Yes,
That's all
sisters and
part of the
brothers.
family. It's just not wife and children, it's parents, aunt, uncles, cousins. I'm very tight with them, because I have no children. I'm very tight with my nephews and nieces,
Yeah.
my cousins, my aunt, uncles, my whole life, especially as an adult. So I don't have the children like you
Yeah,
guys have.
the
So
church has to
I'm
understand
probably, right, even more tighter with them than you men who have children, so that's,
Probably.
you know, a big part of my life is
That's right.
them.
It's still your family.
Still, right, still my family. I don't have a child or grandkid, but, you know, aunt, uncle, parents, nephews, nieces.
Yes, you
extended
do.
cousins, they're
Yeah.
very important to
Oh,
me.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the church can't be narrow-minded to think it's mom and dad and the kids.
Right,
You know, you gotta expand that family out,
right.
the view of that, of family out. Question 7, as we wrap up here. What is a father's responsibility toward his wife and children? And why is it important to recognize a father's responsibility as much more than providing a roof overhead and food on the table?
Because you have to prepare them for life.
Yes.
And you have to prepare them so that they, from the beginning, they will accept God and Jesus as their Savior.
That's your primary responsibility, is to share and to promote and to proclaim, Jesus to the next generation,
Yeah.
and to your wives, and to your children, right? And this is the answer to this is in Luther's Small Catechism, at the beginning of the Catechism. Not the explanation part, but the part that Luther actually wrote. As the head of the household is to teach his family. Okay? That's your responsibility. It's not to provide a roof over your head and food on the table. That's part of it, but that's not the sole. And many men feel that way. That's why I work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, to provide for my family. They would much rather have you than the money that you provide and the roof over your head. So 7 was an easy one, I think, for us, but it's one that we can't overlook for people. Your primary responsibility is to share Christ with your children and to raise them up. And it's a daily and a lifelong task. It's not something, well, after 21, they're moving out now. Nope, it stays in that. 8 is, besides being indicative of long life, what's the blessing of living to see your children's children?
Yeah, because you can send them home at night.
Yeah, okay. And how might this in some circumstances actually be a painful and unpleasant thing?
If you're, for whatever reason, your son or your daughter don't raise them
Okay.
in church.
Make
that
sure
can be
your
a big
children's
issue.
children learn about Christ and the saving grace.
And if they don't, then it's painful,
Yeah,
right?
it's painful.
But it's still, you still have, if you're seeing it, you still have time to do something about it. One of the first thing I thought of though is how is it actually painful is because to see your children's children, you have to get old. And literally it's painful every day. You know?
Yeah, well,
It's just the aches and pains of getting older, so. But your actions, what do your actions now have to do with experience, with which experience you have? You know, is how you raise your children, is how they raise their children. So, it's never too late though. It's-
Which, it changes.
It does,
You know,
absolutely.
The way we raise, our kids, even though, it just changes because of, their surroundings and, they're a lot more, I think they're a lot more, well, the other thing is, they have more money than we have.
That's
So
true.
the kids can get, my one son is, his oldest boy, when he was a junior, got a car. Well, when my oldest son was a junior, we couldn't afford to have 2 cars. Or no, we had 2 cars because I needed one for work, but we couldn't afford 3.
Right.
So it's a difference in, how much, your economic status too. So things change, and I think just because of, they just are a lot more kids are, they still brought up, you know, in the Lutheran school, and they, but what they can do, lots of times I think of, oh, well, you know, you've gotta trust your kid then, that he's gonna go out and, you know, not get crazy, or he's gonna, or if he's out and for, you know, my oldest grandson, okay, I've got an older grandmother. I mean, he just, you know, he's gone places and he's left and come home just because he didn't like what was happening. So, you know,
I suspect that hasn't
that's
changed
the start.
from generation to generation. You still, your parents had to trust that you were going to do the right thing
Yeah.
too. But the perspective changes. The actions of what you do in raising your children change from generation to generation.
Right.
But there are things that don't change, and that's the primary responsibility. Another pivot.
I'm gonna have to get out my Sarah Groves, the song about generations.
Yeah. Here's another pivot. Zion, Jerusalem, and Israel do not have as much relevance for us today as they did for those who used this psalm in the days of the Davidic kingdom and even down to those the time of Jesus and Paul. What might we take from those names today? Zion, Jerusalem, and Israel. This was something that, if you did the questions from yesterday, it's like it came out of nowhere. You were talking about one thing, and all of a sudden you're talking about something else. There is a distinct way of looking at Zion, Jerusalem, and Israel today, especially in the Lutheran Church.
I think you have to look at the New Jerusalem.
Which is what?
Heaven,
Heaven,
compared to the troubled Jerusalem. on
yeah, the
earth.
physical Jerusalem today. And the new Israel, what is the new Israel today? The church, right, yeah. This is this different perspective. Yes, this is a psalm of ascent, by the way, going up. This is what the pilgrims would sing as they were going up to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover or Hanukkah. Well, maybe not so much Hanukkah, because that was a relatively new, that happened like the generation or two before Jesus. But Feast of Booths, Tabernacles, you know, Passover, Yom Kippur, whenever they would go up to Jerusalem, this is one of the songs that they sang. And today we had that opportunity to look at Zion, Jerusalem, and Israel as both heaven as well as the church on earth, which of course our ultimate goal is heaven. So, and this is the question about mountains. What's the deal with mountains? You know, and how that, you know, this was in the devotion from Friday. I think it came out of nowhere about mountains. Maybe not. I know one of them, it was like, where'd that come from? You know, and to see the mountains are a way to look ahead or to look beyond yourself. Which is why those of you, maybe Dwayne was here for the visioning process, the vision frame, the picture in the frame, one of them is a mountain. You know, there's the road, there's the signpost, there's the mountain, and then the sun behind the mountain, which is the horizon. There's something that in the mountains you can see off into the distance where we're going, but there's something on the other side that we can't see, and that would be heaven, you know, that kind of thing, or the future. I think that's question 9. And then question 10 really isn't a question, it's just a task for you for this week, and decide on one thing you'll do today at work or at home that will enact in your life God's way of blessing this. So, and here we are at 10 o'clock. So, beautiful. That's why I love this Bible study. It works really, really well. I love doing this in the morning. I did it every morning this week in the morning, not to brag, but it was just a blessing to me to be able to start my day in the dark, you know,
Yeah.
a little bit of music, and doing this with a cup of coffee. So next week then, is week 6 in this book, Psalms of Divine Wisdom, so the current book, and you'll be looking at the first 12 verses of Psalm 139.
Take more than one verse at a time.
Yes, you will.
Psalm 139?
Psalm 139, yes. I'm just looking at how long this psalm actually is.
Is
Why?
12 verses.
So it is only 12 verses. No, it's 24.
Oh.
So we're only going to take half of the
I'm
psalm.
gonna take half of it then.
Yeah. And then we'll be done, because 2 weeks from today is Christmas Day.
Yeah.
I'm just scared. bejeebus out of you there. And then 3 weeks today is New Year's Day. And then the following Sunday, so in 4 weeks, we'll come back and do this one, which is Psalms of Lament. These are sitting on the desk on the church office counter, so if you want to pick one up, and then we'll do that. I know we've been doing Genesis, but this...
What was that verse, Pastor?
Psalm 139.
139.
Okay, Psalm 130, okay.
All right? Let us close with prayer. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for our time together today. Bless us that we may enact and see either changes in our lives today or just something that we can do that will enact in our lives your way of blessedness, whether we're going to work today or we're going to be at home today, and bring us around your word and sacrament this weekend in Jesus' name.